Attention! The National Weather Service has issued a hurricane warning for the entirety of the National Hockey League. Please stay tuned for further information from the Storm Cellar.
Welcome back to the Storm Cellar. Huge victory last night for Spencer Martin, his first career NHL shutouts. It wasn't as good as watching him beat the Bruins live in Boston for me, Ray, but it was pretty good. And the Brady, puck toss after the huge stop there at the end to save the shutouts. Our goalies don't seem to like Tkachuk, which is, I don't really either. So I was all for it. The fact he apologized made me giggle because I'm like, no, you did the right thing. Caniacs are petty. This is good. How about you, man? How you feeling today?
Look, that was you and I every now and again. Well, actually, all the time after every game, we have a stick. This, for the player of the game, right? And I was giving Martin this stick just for throwing the puck back at Tkachuk. Not the shutout, not the calmness that he brought, which made me feel more calm with him in net. It was like he wasn't whatever, just throwing the puck back at him. I said he gets the stick of the game. And I mean, that's just it. And it was great. I loved it. We're getting ready for snowfall. This next week, every day there's going to be snow. Now in Calgary, we've said it before. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. The snow will fall and then will melt immediately. But every day we're going to have snow this coming week.
And it's 60 degrees here in Boston this week. Or was this weekend. It's nuts, man. It's so hot here.
Is it really? Yeah.
It should be like in the
strange.
Upper 40s.
Man, oh man. Well, you know what? It is what it is. You know what else is hot? The Storm Cellar, when we've got a fantastic guest to join us. That's when things get really hot here in the Storm Cellar. And we are delighted to have a famous Hockey Mama 2.
Not infamous, famous.
Not infamous. No, I wasn't going there. Hockey Mama 2, Carolyn Oviatt, joining us in the studio. She's pulled up a chair. Carolyn, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. After that, I was going into that game last night with a bit of trepidation and came out of it higher than a kite. So, we're great. Let's just keep it rolling.
Yes, I agree 100%. Now, of course, here in the Storm Cellar, we are all about the Caniacs. We believe that the Caniacs are the fuel to the fire of the team and how they play, and it's why they love being here through and through. But the Caniacs all have a story. Of how they got into hockey, how they became Caniacs. We love hearing it all because there's some that made a transfer from their previously cheered for team to Carolina, and then there's others we're starting to see generational, like kids are growing up to be Hurricanes fans, and that's fantastic. But it all had to start somewhere, and so Carolyn, Hockey Mama 2, I'm going to turn the spotlight to you and the mic and say, tell us, how did you become a Caniac? Give us your backstory. Love to hear it.
All right. Well, thanks so much for that glowing introduction. Not sure it's deserved, but I'll.
It is. It absolutely is.
So, it's funny. I think for a lot of people, when they're really passionate about something, there's often like a real personal moment or something that really clicked with them, and why they care so much or keep coming back and don't get easily distracted or discouraged. And without getting too much into it, mine really came out of a really dark time of my life when I separated from my ex-husband, and I had 3 little kids. The boys, this was in March of 2006. You can see where this is going.
Oh my.
And my boys at the time had just turned 9, were almost 6. And it was a difficult time. But the 9-year-old's neighbor had discovered NHL 06 on his GameCube or something. I mean, I think it was that early, in life.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and they started playing driveway hockey. And for the oldest boy, who, you really were sensitive to, seeing him have this outlet and he was having fun, and really it was a change of life for the whole family dynamic for, obvious reasons. And he really got into it. So we started watching games, and our whole evening schedule was different. We could all do this together. My daughter was only 2. And that season was just magical, as you know. And it became the happy place where we all kind of could escape and not have to deal with the stuff that was unknown and uncomfortable and all that. We could just be happy in those game 7s, and they fought it through. It was just such an emotional lift, and for me to connect with the boys who are just that right age, boys are when they're discovering sports and learning numbers and all of that. I had 3 older brothers. I'm very, I grew up in that world. So that became, and I think school got out, and we were up at the Hillsborough Sportsplex learning to skate with the neighbor. So both boys started learning to skate, and the oldest boy, who's now 27, was just took to it. And I saw him go from kind of a angry, kind of to himself introverted kid, and he'd get out there on skates. The shoulders would go back,
Yeah.
the legs were going, the smile was on his face, and you're going, that's what I want. That's what I want for my kids. And it was such a thing. And all the people, especially in Hillsborough, which was kind of its own little community. We participated in the Raleigh League, but it was not as caught up with just lots of different things. We were a community, and so met lots of great parents who didn't really have all the background story of me. I could just kind of come in fresh, and I didn't have to deal with all of the the other stuff. So I really connected with them. Ended up being a manager for the teams. Loved meeting the coaches, and just enjoyed. I'd do little. It was more email then than we'd do texting, and so I'd write up little post gamer things. And at the same time, I was kind of a single mom, had too much time on my hands after kind of getting through stuff, and ended up discovering Canes Country before there was Twitter and everything, and these game threads. And so it was sort of just very humorous, very witty, learned a lot. Just it was such a great escape. And at one point, then Bob Wage, who was running Canes Country before SB Nation, I'm not sure around that time, he asked me if I wanted to join, and so for a while I was doing the clicks and clippings, which I'd go in about once, maybe twice a week, and just be a link dump, an aggregator, I think is what they call it. I was describing it to my daughter. She says, "Oh, you're an influencer," but that became just finding things and being the way you could find. I put a little one sentence. Is this, you have to read this. You have to read this too. Somebody said this, you've seen it before, but here you go. And then was doing some recaps, got to do some other writing for other blogs, and then finally kind of changed and got a real job. And that was about the time that sort of the 2012, 2013, when things started, kind of the dark years. And kind of had arm's length, was not a big fan of those coaches. Wasn't shy about saying that. And then, Dundon came in and Rod came in, and it's like, all right. And then just completely bought in. My boys are still huge fans, go to games around the country. My boy in San Diego, we went to an LA Anaheim weekend. And then last year we did, the second boy, who's now gainfully employed out of school, met us in Tempe, and then we drove up to Las Vegas and had a great time. This year we're going to do the Toronto-Montreal pairing, and are very excited about that. We were going to do Four Nations, but my son's wife's good friend had a wedding that weekend, and so we're like, all right, actually the next weekend looks pretty good. We get to see Toronto too, not just Montreal. So very excited, looking forward to that.
There's 2 threads in what you've said that I want to pull on. if it's okay.
Sure.
Number one, I don't think until you get into it, being a hockey mom or a parent who is involved with the team like that, like it's an immense amount of work. Like it keeps you going at all times.
Yep.
And it's for if you don't know of the game very much or whatever, and you jump in, that is an education like fast. And
Yeah.
it's so great, like minor hockey for kids. Um, while it does have some issues with parents who can be over exuberant, there are the parents that make it go.
Right.
And that is so amazing, like that you're involved with it and you jumped in as quickly as you did. So that's, first of all, that's amazing. And then second of all, the other thread I was going to pull on was uh, being the influencer for the team immediately and just kicking out the information for people to know. Like that's uber important too. I can't even imagine how grateful the organization would be to you, especially in a situation where you're still building up the fans, right? You're still building up the excitement for, this is the place to be to see the game and stuff. And that joy that you had through your children, but also for yourself. And then to turn that into an influencer type situation where you're sharing stories and you're putting info out there at all times to keep the Hurricanes front and center in people's minds. That's amazing. Like that is truly amazing. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because at the time, blogs were sort of not welcome in the NHL, in the media center. I mean, it has changed so much. I remember the Caps were they had two or three. There was the Japers Rink and then RM, she never writes, RM Nemby. Those things, and they were getting press passes. And Bob Wage and then Corey Lavalette, he was writer number 2, and I was number 3. And, but I mean, there was it was clear that they had not quite sure they liked us. I mean, or they were a little cautious. Were we going to say something or do something that wasn't, especially me, not professional, or, kind of crossed the line? And they really were, I'm not sure I felt that. Let's put it that way. It was definitely, they've changed so much, but this would have been, 2010, 2011. Things were not as welcome. The social media thing was still looked at as scams, and they really much preferred traditional media. Things have changed a lot, as they should have. But it's definitely a feeling thing.
Yeah, as a former broadcaster, I can tell you that certain folks can be like that with the traditional reporters as well.
Yeah,
I've experienced it myself. It can be very cliquish, but you carved out a spot, and you represent well. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It was fun. You were saying you wanted to have like a few good stories. There was the time I was in the penalty box with Paul Maurice's 10-year-old son. I was in the visitors team. He played for the opponent. I actually don't remember which son it was because he has 2. One was a year older and a year younger than my second boy. But I can remember sitting with him and then looking over and seeing his dad, who Paul did a shout out, on the, I think it was the night that he, held up the cup, Dad, we're here. And his dad was sitting across, this was at the old rec zone, which then became probably center ice. Is that what it was called? I don't think they use it anymore, but it was the practice rink for the Canes before a while ago. And I looked over, and there's no question that it was Maurice's dad. Looked just like him, had kind of that newsboy cap on. And I could see the little boy was probably 9 or 10. He was upset. He was called for a penalty. And, and whatever I said, I probably said something to kind of jokingly say, you didn't deserve it. Something like that. I had a one-liner. And I can remember watching him just smile and thinking, all right, I just got him out of it. He was just, feeling so terrible. And afterwards, it's just the chaos in the lobby of bags and reunions and getting the kids are all sweaty and everything. And the dad saw me and just kind of came over and nodded and said, "Hey, thanks for that." And it was
That's
just like,
fantastic.
yeah, those moments. And the other moment I had was when they announced that the Checkers were going to be the affiliate, right, in Charlotte. And I was very excited about that. And I went down and spent like 3 or 4 hours and got to talk to Tara Black and Lappin. I can't remember his first name. He's not there anymore. And just kind of interviewed her before we had even started any games, and did a 2-part post. It got a lot of play.
Nice.
And so that was a kind of a semi-professional moment. But I really enjoyed that because it was more not just clicks and clippings, but, interviewing someone who was younger than me, but had kind of, was in management and all of that, but in the hockey world. And how did that happen? How did she get there? And she's a fascinating woman, really, really skilled, obviously, and professional. That was a good one.
Awesome. Hey, so Carolyn, you got involved in 2006, so that I think it might be a pretty obvious one, but we always do these questions for our Caniacs and about who's your favorite. Do you have a favorite of all time, or do you have a favorite now? Are they different? It's like,
how do you choose from your children? I have 3 children, none of my favorites, but I think Rod was obviously, just what he did. You watch somebody who cared and just came through and carried the thing. He was so inspirational, and then is now in a coaching role. I was a big fan of Brandon Sutter. Huge fan of Jeff Skinner, but more just because he was so delightful to watch play. He was just so creative. Was so angry when he was traded. But
so was my daughter.
But it's like, I still have clipped the quote from Don Waddell. "I don't think scoring will be a problem for us going forward." That was his quote after the trade. And of course it was. And then, currently my jerseys are, Aho is the first one. You can't go wrong with Aho. It's just so reliable. Good segue to your next section. And I delight watching Nages. He's so creative and so skilled. Svechnikov and Kochetkov, definitely. All of those guys. So I like the bigger personalities. My sons both have Slavin jerseys. They both play defense.
That's a great tarp to wear if you're a defenseman. That shows the respect in a big way. You can't go wrong having a Slavin jersey.
He does it all right.
He does.
And the oldest one plays in San Diego for the men's league, C League, I guess now. And he got custom sticks, and he has running on the shaft. He goes, "The Slavin of La Jolla," is what he refers to himself as. So
that's terrific. Yeah. That's terrific. Brad, that is so great, Carolyn, and clearly,
and what a different story than so many of our guests too, right?
Yes.
That's the cool thing about our podcast, talking to the Caniacs about the Caniacs, right? Is I think your story, Carolyn, is very unique out of 5 years worth of guests.
Right.
And even after 5 years, we still, are able to find and talk to people that have a unique perspective and a unique situation, and how, and, not only they got into hockey, but how they interact with the team and what it means to them and stuff. That's really awesome.
Yeah. Definitely different. I wasn't a season ticket holder until a few years ago when I finally got kids out of the house and gainfully employed. That was just not something I could allocate funds to, and I can now. Got my whole office, actually. We went to a couple games, and the partner said, "We should get season tickets for the office." I'm like, okay. So we did.
There you go. That's fantastic. Carolyn, you mentioned the game sevens. Were you in were you in the barn for Game 7?
No, I
You were
was
like
watching on
me.
TV. I had 3 little kids upstairs, half asleep. I'm a single mom. No, I mean, there was
And
no
how
way.
did they stay awake if you
Oh,
were
they didn't.
cheering your face off? Yeah,
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah. I mean, after they won Game 7, I was so wired, and I had you printed out iron-ons for shirts. We did this for the hockey team, so they had some stuff, so I had some spare thing, and I woke them up to white T-shirts with Stanley Cup champions and Canes logos on them that next morning. I stayed up and printed it out till 3 in the morning.
Good for you.
It's like second Christmas. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is top shelf right there.
Yeah,
Holy cow. That is great. I love your story. Love everything about it. It's time to segue a little bit, Brad. Before we started, we were chopping this up and trying to figure out what we wanted to talk about when, and I had to be the downer of sorts. Because to me, I wanted to address a couple of things. And I texted this to Brad last night during the game. And he was like, cool. Yeah, let's do it this way. The big elephant in the room for the Carolina Hurricanes this season. This week, in a press conference that we had on, I believe it was Friday, Rod Brindamore told us all what we really didn't want to hear, but perhaps suspected. And that was that the week to week for Frederik Andersen was no longer week to week. And the quote, I believe, was much longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart broke. And of course, Kochetkov was injured at the time too, which, suddenly full on your number 1A and your 1B goaltenders are out. And we don't know how long Kochetkov is going to be gone for. Andersen, who I love through and through. I think he's just an amazing player. I can't imagine the anguish that he feels and the frustration that he must feel when folks like us have unbelievable frustration that he's out again. You know what I mean? If it's bad for us, imagine what it's like for him, kind of deal. What do we do about Andersen? How does the team react? Where do we go from here? This is tough.
Yeah, and and to your point, Kochetkov might even play today, right? So we knew as of yesterday it was very short term, and that they even said he could have went yesterday, but just better safe than sorry, especially with Andersen in his predicament. So that's good news. So we'll see. I said yesterday before the game, start Martin back to back. We used to start goalies back to back. That was not an unusual thing. He went out there and just showed up last night. And even if Piotr can go, fine, put him on the bench and let him back up. I mean, it's 2 games, right? Martin's not going to be gassed. He hasn't been, I'm not worried about that. So the good news is Kochetkov is there. We should have a 1A, 1B of Kochetkov and Martin for the foreseeable future. Knock on wood, nobody gets hurt. With Andersen, the big thing for me is, because I'm with you, we've defended Andersen. He wasn't the reason the Leafs lost in the COVID year. He was the scapegoat. He's good. He's solid. Injury is not something you can control. And that's the one knock. I mean, you can knock him for that. I can't fault you there. But part of what we heard yesterday was that, could require surgery. Surgery was an option. And we still don't know what the injury is, right? Lower body, which means in NHL terms, it's something below his neck, right?
Yeah.
Lower body, not the head. But if it's something that surgery can fix and he can be back this year, fix it. Do you know what I mean? Ideally, yes, you would want to wait it out and let the body heal slowly and all. But if this is a recurrent injury of something, the same thing that he's done last year and the year before and the year before, at some point you need to fix it, right? You can put oil in your car. If your car burns oil, you can keep adding a quart every week and it'll run. But at some point you need to plug the leak.
Yeah.
So if this is that kind of situation, plug the leak. If it's not that situation, then, the team doctors should do what they think is best, right? I mean, because we don't know, and even if they say it's a groin, it's a thigh, it's a whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the same thing as before. So we don't really know. But if this is a recurrent, muscle group or something of that nature, if you can fix it, fix it. Like, not even for us, because he's gone at the end of the year. I'd love to see him get another shot somewhere else next year. I don't want him back with the injury history at this point. As much as I love him, like, you need stability in goal if this is going to work. So I don't know what they need to do. I know people were clamoring, we have to bring in a goalie. We absolutely have to bring in a goalie. We cannot go with Martin if Kachekhov's out. And I said from the beginning in the last couple of days, absolutely not. That's the wrong thing to do. This was meant to be a rebuilding year of sorts. Like, this was meant to be a transitional year. They've got off onto a fire start. They're way ahead of where we thought they would be. And if Tulsky legit thinks that you are an Eastern Conference Finals Stanley Cup contender, then make a move for a goalie. But if you think you're a playoff contender, maybe second round, maybe you squeak into the Eastern Conference Finals, then don't spend the money this year. You have money on the books that's coming off for next year, and find the right guy, because who's available today that's a 1A, 1B? Because the people that were on that list, like the summer list, if anybody's looking it up, and that's all you can really find, half those guys are, Swayman signed, right?
Yeah.
Like those guys, the only person who's available potentially is Aiden Hill out of Vegas, is on the last year of his deal. But I don't see how Vegas doesn't re-sign him. The other UFAs going forward are Gorgiev out of Colorado, who has not been the same goaltender since they won the Cup, and Frederick Anderson.
Yeah, here you go.
Where's you know what I mean? I mean, don't make a move to make a move. I have more confidence in Martin maybe than some, because when I saw him in Boston, he looked really sharp. Now, can he string that together consistently? That I don't know. But he's last year and 2 years ago Natchez for me, right? He shows that he can do it, and then he has a game and you're like, oh, that was ugly, right? So last night, a pretty good Sens team. The Sens got off to a really slow start, but then came on, and they were hammering him in the third, and he stood up. So can he be a backup? Can you run Kachekov for 2/3 of the games? You can. I think Piotr plays better when he plays more. You just can't let him get tired. And if you can do that and have Martin fill in the gaps, points percentage wise, you're the second best team in the league. You're behind the Jets, who are off to, an all-time great start.
Yeah, historic, right?
I mean, there's time. Like, don't panic, right? Like, if you can bring in a good goaltender that's a legit upgrade, great. I worry more in terms of goaltending about the Wolves, because the Wolves are going to get shellacked because they have two guys on PTOs because Martin's up. And Pretz was up. So, that's a good Wolves Weekly or Wolves Wednesday thing for Zach over at Locked on Hurricanes to talk about, because this affects them more than us. But short term, Martin as a backup to Kachekov, who should be back at least in the next couple of games, fine.
Yeah, I hear you. Carolyn, what's your take?
I was thinking the same thing. I mean, if we can get the Martin, and did you see the interview he did with Hockey Night Canada after the game last night that Martin did?
I missed it.
Yeah, he had the white towel and they talked to him, and he was Sportsnet even did a second clip, and so he walked away. He was like, "Wait, do I have to give the towel back?" and they said, "No, you get to keep it." He goes, "Yeah." I mean, if we can get, I just don't know what his durability is. I just don't know if that's just a peak and he can't sustain that. I don't know if anybody knows if he can. If he can be what we saw last year with the games that he played, other than the Columbus game, and which I think he was 4-0-1 before that last lapper. And then, I was a little concerned coming out of the Colorado and Utah games, just like, okay, that was a flash in the pan. If it's sustainable, I can see doing PK and Martin for the rest of the season. But if I just don't know if he can, keep that focus, keep that energy for that long the test. That's where the goalies tend to, they can only do it for so long. And then what was PK's comment about the effing garbage brain?
And hopefully last night's a confidence builder, right? I mean,
Yeah.
all you need is Martin to get hot, right? Even if he's really an AHL guy, if he can just get hot for a few weeks.
Yeah. And if he's playing more regularly, I mean, he came into Colorado, hardly had played, and then that terrible situation in Utah. So maybe if he's getting once a week, which he'll get at least for the next 2 weeks because of all the back-to-backs, December is a lot more open. He's 29. He's not like he's a 21-year-old who hasn't figured out how to manage his emotions or whatever. This is a guy who's been through a lot.
Right.
And, that the chutzpah of how he was treating Tkachuk was just a real confidence builder for everybody, I think. He was not daunted by the moment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And the interview with Sportsnet, there was just a gratitude and I've been preparing for this my whole life kind of thing, and I just needed the chance. Those are the words you want to hear.
You know what? When that horn sounded and ended the game, and just seeing the joy that he displayed on the ice, like he was so excited. And even the big save he made at the very end of the second, where it's a breakaway, he makes the stop and the time hasn't fully run out. And he's skating to the bench. Like, get that out of here. I was like, he's got something going. There's a confidence that he's showing that is promising. That is very, very promising.
Yoder's rubbing off on him.
Well, and that is contagious. Brad, that's exactly it. That type of confidence, it is contagious, and it can spread like wildfire through a team, and that's what you want. I'm wishing the best for Anderson, as speedy and complete recovery as quickly as possible. But any thought of signing him beyond this year is gone now. And for many, it was gone long before, because they want to make the transition to Kochetkov, and that that makes sense. I hope he can come back and contribute. He was the best goals against average goaltender. While he was going, he was hot. He was doing great.
Yeah.
And then something comes up and bites him, and it's tough. I hated seeing it.
I've been thinking about, they mentioned one reason he was so good at the start is because he was playing for Denmark in the Olympic qualifiers in August.
Yeah.
And apparently carried the team single-handedly to the Olympics. And I'm sure that's very important to him. So I'm thinking he's as much thinking in his head right now, February 2026, as anything. And that's, how does that all fit into his plans? Does he go back to Europe so he can not get injured before February the 26th?
Yeah.
And I would be surprised if that's his priority. And understandably, I don't criticize him for that. That's a big deal.
That's a great point, Carolyn. No question. Seeing his performance, and he made a lot of saves in that game that qualified him.
lot. I didn't see it.
It was, I think it was upwards of 40 plus saves. I think
was actually trying to bring it up and couldn't find it here. I'm looking at the Euro hockey.
It was so good. Good.
And,
so there we are with Anderson. The other thing that I told Brad, immediately after Aho scored on the power play last night, my very first text, we don't always share our texts between Brad and I, because it can be heated,
Yeah,
spicy
it's
sometimes.
not family friendly text, just a family friendly podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, the very first text I said was, "Now can everyone get off Aho's back?" Um, Brad, you've done a whole heaping pile of research, and you're ready to go into your rant. And normally I would beat you to that. I'm a little more rantier perhaps than you, because I start pounding on the table and stuff like that. You've always been the level-headed one. I'm the emotional one, but you did all the research. So I'm turning things over to you. Please
All right.
explain to everyone why they need to get off Aho's back and complaining about him. Ready?
Yeah,
Go.
there is an undercurrent coming from a lot of different places. It's not like a main topic point, but I keep seeing it filter into podcasts and posts and writings and experts and the whole shebang, right? It's not just the Caniacs, national media, why is Naho scoring? And people come back to, well, he's a slow starter, but he shouldn't be. Well, yeah, he shouldn't be, but he is. It's just who he is, okay? Aho right now has 15 points on the season, 6 of them on the power play, and 9 at even strength. And of those 9, probably half of them are like OT points, right? So I don't think he had a 5-on-5 goal
Correct.
going into last night.
And last night was 5-on-3.
Yep. And that's fair criticism, right? Like, we do need him scoring at 5-on-5. But before people go off the rails, but the big thing, one of the big things I heard was like, how is your superstar player, got 2 shots in, I think it was the Utah game. And I can tell you why. So to rewind to last year a little bit. So last year, season opens on October 10th. So through the 11-16 and through November 16th, Aho had 13 points, 4 goals, 9 assists. Through 11-16 this year, he has 4 goals, 11 assists. That sounds eerily familiar. So he's ahead of last year, right? Which is around a point per game. He's a little less than that this year because I think they had an extra game in that time span. But this is his traditional slow start. It just is what it is. I don't know why it happens. I would love for it not to happen. But a slow start for Aho is not as slow as people think it is, because I know that gets bandied around a lot. I know we've said it before. So last year through November 16th, point per game. For the rest of the season, he ends up with 89 points, which is, I don't think anybody has a problem with 89 points, right? I mean, looking at y'all don't seem upset over that.
No.
From November 17th through the season, it was 1.17 points per game, which is not insignificant, but it's not like it's 2 points. You know what I mean? Like, he got better and his point totals ended up really good, but it's not like it's night and day. I mean, he was getting an extra point every 5 games, which means he's getting an extra point, less than 1 extra point per week. That's not a big change. This year, he's ahead of that, right? He's actually, he's at 0.97, I think, points per game. But my point is, he's on the same pace he was last year, and it's very similar to the pace he was on the years before, right? But what people can't see the forest for the trees, that, in my opinion, is look at his line mates. Okay? I heard people talking about, I'll say it, Locked On Hurricanes. Zach had on one of the Canadians, not Canadians, one of the Senators fans, and they were talking about, you're paying Aho, he needs to get goals. And I don't disagree with Zach, and I wish I could remember his guest name at all. Like, on some level, yes, but a point is a point. If you get an assist, somebody scored a goal. Do I care if Aho has 60 goals and 2 assists? I don't. Do I care if he has 2 goals and 60 cents? I really, one part of me is like, yes, like, we're paying him. I want to see him get goals. But as long as he's getting points, why do I care if he's the assist guy or if he's the goal scorer? And the reason I bring that up is when people say Aho needs to shoot more, he has 45 shots on goal for the season. That is second most on the team.
Yeah.
Who was first on the team? It's honestly easy if you've been watching the games in some ways. I mean, it may not jump out at you, but
is it Ghost?
It's not. It's Svechnikov.
Yeah, there you go.
Svech has 57 shots on goals. He is a shooting machine this year. He is way above last year. And you know who's third on the team in shots?
I have no idea.
Jack Roslovic.
Oh.
His Aho, Roslovic, and Svech, the top line together are your top three shooters, which is how it's supposed to be. So when people say Aho needs to shoot more, well, how can he shoot more? He's second on the team, and his line mates are first and third. And when I say don't see the forest for the trees, if you think about it, Roslovic so far has had a career year, right? He has been the X factor on that line in some early games. Nobody saw that coming, and that is why Aho feels like his production is down. Okay, so hear me out. You're the opposing coach. You have Aho, Svechnikov, and Roslovic. Who are you putting your top defenders on of those three? Probably Aho 1, probably Svech 2, and probably Roslovic is your afterthought. Yeah. Who has been wide open in front of the net and from all over and is burying those chances, right? Yeah, Jack, so the reason Aho is getting more assists and fewer goals is because he is we've always known that he likes to pass instead of shoot. Like, he gets goals. Like, he's a goal scorer. So you can, in overtime, he's phenomenal. But he's looking for the pass, and he's getting those passes. He's also taking the shots. So I understand that we would love to see Aho with more goals, but he's on the same pace he traditionally is at this time of year. And his teammates have stepped it up. Last season, through November 16th, where Aho had a point per game, Svech was at 0.5 points per game. Yeah. This year on that line, Svech is at 0.94. So Aho has elevated Svech up to his level, and Roslovic is at 0.63 with 9 goals, which was his season total. So Aho is making his line mates better, and you're probably not seeing the goals come because he's the one he and Svechnikov have very little time and space, because teams are letting Roslovic have that space, and he's been capitalizing, and his shooting percentage will come down to earth at some point, but he's taken advantage of that, right? So I get the idea, right? I get why people want him to feel like he needs to shoot more. I get why they want him to score more goals, but if you look at why he's not doing those things, he is shooting plenty. Yeah. And as far as goal scoring, he is who he is. I mean, he always has been a lot more of an assist guy than a goals guy. And the way that the team is built this year, he's taken a brunt of the, opponent's top defenders, which are now starting to shift toward the second line. It's been pretty clear, which should open him up and it should free him up. But this is just Aho being Aho. If anything, I would say, instead of saying he should shoot more, we need to see more goals out of him, maybe we need to reevaluate. He's always been the one guy we can count on, right? He's always been the one we've called the star, right? He's Ron Francis 2.0. Ron Francis was not a goal scorer. Ron Francis was a setup man his whole career. He is a Hall of Fame a setup man. I mean, he's number 2 in assists all time, right? Behind Wayne Gretzky.
Brad, you keep this up, I'm going to start crying.
So I get the sentiment. I don't necessarily disagree with them wholeheartedly, but I do think that once you start looking at it in a broader context, it becomes more clear why he's playing and getting points in the way that he is. Do I think Aho will end up with 80, 90 points again? Yep. Not worried about it. The big thing this year versus last year is we're not relying on Aho to be the guy who has to get all those, right? A lot of that focus is shifting to Natchez, right? Robinson's coming through. Roslovic's coming through. KK has a bunch of assists and a goal. The team is 8. Oh gosh, I want to say, is it 8-2-0 in the last 10?
Yes.
Now those were 2 bad losses, but you're 8-2-0 in your last 10.
Yeah, hard to
You've
complain.
won 80% at a 0.8 winning percentage. That's better than your overall season winning percentage, and it still puts you second in the league. So those 2 games stunk, and I get, we all need things to talk about. We all, whether you're a sports writer, whether you're a fan, the what have you done for me lately is real, right? We do it here on our show. Everybody does it. But Aho is playing fine, right?
Yep.
He doesn't need to take the extra pressure. If anything, as the second line, if they continue to score at the rate they're able to score, it's going to free up the quote-unquote first line a little bit. And as teams, if Jack Roslovic in particular, and Svech, if he can get going, on the goal front a little more, if those guys continue what they're doing or improve a little bit, it'll free up Aho, because Aho won't be the center of attention anymore on that line, and it's going to free him up to do what Aho does. So that's my rant.
Man, there should be a mic drop right here, like boom. I don't know how you followed that, Carolyn, but I wanted to get your take on it before I chip in with just a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think everything you said is spot on. In my since I've read everything, even if I don't have opinions, Corey Lavalette did a great piece in The Athletic. The subject was, why does Sebastian Aho feel like an afterthought for the Hurricanes? That was November 15th, so it was that Friday. And he basically kind of comes at a different angle, but for the same conclusion. He's bad luck shooting, all these other things get off his back. I mean, that may not be the title, but that's sort of it comes around. This is how he always is. Don't worry about it. If I had a concern, I'm a little worried about Svech. I want Svech to score because I feel like he's getting the chances, whereas Aho is the setup man, maybe in the role of Turbo Teravainen, That was a big loss for him, I'm sure, in terms of how he thinks of his role. And if it was Laine, I think, who once said, from when they were World Juniors, says that Aho's the computer brain, and that he's just constantly taking all this input, analyzing, and that
mm-hmm.
the whiteboard behind with all the formulas going round.
Yeah.
And he's he's still processing. There's a lot happening, and he's getting a lot of data. And at some point, he's going to put it all together, and he'll be who he is, because he always is. He's too good and too smart and cares too much. So I'm not worried about Aho. I'd like to see Svech, put a little bit more in the net. I think he's getting opportunities and just keeps missing. So that's a different topic. But yeah, totally good. Every graph about the Hurricanes has us up at top of deep offense, which we didn't used to be. We used to be awesome. We'd be in the quadrant that was great defense, meh, offense. Now we're back at the best of the best, exploding the X and Y axis, because we're so far up here and everybody else is down, closer to center. Get off the back.
Yes. Thank you, Carolyn. And what I'm going to say is, and I don't mean it to sound like I'm attacking the guest from that show, but it's going to sound like that. So there's no way.
It was a good episode. If you don't listen to Locked on Hurricanes, you should. Zach does a phenomenal daily podcast about the Hurricanes. It is the only podcast I listen to every day.
And me too, by the way. But let me say this. If you look at Aho and say, you're the one getting paid the big bucks, you have to score, clearly doesn't know who Aho is. That's not the only reason he got the big contract. He got the big contract because he plays 200 feet. He is great defensively. He is a leader. He doesn't, everyone says it looks like he's taking nights off. He's not. I've never seen him take a night off. And is there anyone who are the people in the league that are paid to score goals and that's it? No one is paid just to score goals, because they all have defensive responsibilities as well. And you've got to play the whole game. You can't cherry pick at the blue line and wait for the puck to come to you so you can go in on a breakaway. I mean, he's on the he's a shorthanded key. He scores a lot of shorthanded goals. It just defensively sound, smart, it's so narrow-minded and so frustrating to hear people crack on him. And you know, everyone knows who listens to us knows that I'm his biggest fan and that I appreciate everything he does. He doesn't have to score tons of goals. If he's setting people up, if he's hustling, if he's shutting down other teams on the penalty kill, thank you. Like, thank you. And what's great about the stats that you brought up, Brad, no one was cracking on him last year like they are this year. No one cracking on him like that. And he's better this year than he was last year.
He is.
Statistically.
I think after those two games, it was just a rough, you look at the score sheet and you go, Aho has two shots. And without context, that kind of jumps out at you. But I feel like in one of those two games, Svechnikov had 5.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we talk about plus minus. You can't use plus minus solely as an indicator if somebody's good or not, right? Well, you can't look at shots on goal that way either. Like, look at their line. Like what's going on? So go ahead, Carolyn.
No, I couldn't agree more. I don't know the Aho. Get off his back. Stop. We're done. Move on.
Yeah, I hear you.
They're.
Yeah.
I would say an Ottawa guy may look at that. I did not hear the podcast. If anybody who's watched Aho for, what are we at, 10 years now?
Yeah.
9 years. It's fine. It's fine if you're just looking at some stat sheets or an occasional game.
Well, and that's the other thing too, I think, is a lot of the experts and so forth. There's a lot of people that don't call him a superstar because he doesn't score points like McDavid and McKinnon. And you know what I mean? He doesn't score goals like that. He's not, I think he could, frankly, I still think he could get to 100 points.
Yeah.
The way that he plays, like last year he got to 89 and he had less at the start, right? Can you imagine, if things keep going, he stays healthy, good, chemistry with his line, he could still get there. I don't know what everyone is on him about, but I would like them to stop because they're trying.
I think there's a lot of confirmation bias too. I think media knows who their first round picks were and who they selected. And so they want the guys that they knew when they were 18 and they wrote about and that everything was talking about. When a guy comes out of the second round, there's like, yeah, well, I knew he wasn't really good because there's that.
Yeah.
There's a, you see that I knew this guy was going to be good. So they keep looking for the thing to prove. Yeah, see, I told you he was going to be right. And so you have to overcome that and just shut it out and realize that that's just, we all know. We know. We got
the
it.
national media guys, to tie into that, if you ask somebody if you're going to build a team around somebody, give me names, right? They're going to say McKinnon. They're going to say Draisaitl. They're going to say McDavid. They're going to say Eichel. They're going to say, Kucherov. Matthews.
Right,
Great.
Right.
How many of those guys play 5v5, power play, penalty kill, overtime in any situation? Most of them don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Sebastian Aho plays in
and 3-on-3
situation.
and
Yeah.
There is nothing that kid can't do. Is he going to put up, 1.83 points per game like McKinnon is so far this year? He's not. But if it was a 1v1 competition, like it was like old NHL 95, right? And you say, who's going to win between Aho and McKinnon 1v1? I'd be like, if they're actually going to play defense, I'll take Aho. Because McKinnon's great. But, Aho knows how to defend. Like if it's, if we're looking at a total package, that's probably my guy between those, right? Those are the things he does well. That's what he's paid for. Other guys are paid to be, power play specialists. That's whole half of Ovi's career, right? Is go to the left face-off dot and swing hard.
And stand there. Yeah.
So, and real quick, just because, we're starting to go a little long, which is, hey, I don't have to go to soccer. Jackson Blake had a quote to Ryan Hinkle that I read this morning. I just wanted to share it real quick. And he said, if you're not hunting pucks, what are you doing out there, right? And that is if you said, Rod, tell me what you want to hear out of the mouth of a young player on your team, I would think that would be like verbatim what Rod would want him to say.
Yep.
The kid gets it. He get his fifth goal of the night, the fifth goal of the campaign. The last time we had a 53, pretty sure it was maybe there might have been a 53 in between, but we had Jeff Skinner as a Calder candidate. Jackson Blake is playing extremely well. Hopefully he'll continue to develop, but his attitude, the way he grinds, the way he goes after pucks, the way he hustles on defense, all those things were evident last night, and really liking this kid's game. I just had to give him a shout out.
Yeah. I said last night, pro's pro at 21. He is he understands the game, and it's so obvious at 21.
Perfect description, Carolyn.
And Jackson Blake is now, with 5 goals, the second only to Matt Van Mitchkoff, who's the superstar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For goals among rookies, ahead of Stankoven and a bunch of guys tied at 3. And for points, he is tied for 5th with Lane Hudson, and who, they can't stop talking about.
Siplikov, yep.
Yeah, Siplikov. And then Stankoven, who had at least a full year in the AHL, so he's got to be a lot older, right? I don't know what his age is, but he is really good. When he's on the ice and making moves, when he scored that goal last night, I mean, you just nothing but smiles. He's not afraid to go anywhere. Right in the front of the net where everything's in full-on panic mode and everyone's scrambling, stick swinging, and he's in there looking for it. And I mean, that's what you want. That is the work ethic that he has is amazing, through the roof. And his post-game quote was, I saw Spets had 2 guys draped all over him, so I knew when it poked free, I could get it. I mean, it was like he sees the game.
Yes.
He's did the math. Oh, if there's 2 guys on him, let's find that soft spot. And, and the little almost fell down twirl as he celebrates, so he's so endearing, when they're young.
It's awesome. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
Let's break down the games from the past week. Let's start with Vegas. And that was a dominating performance by the Canes. We all suspected that it would be maybe the toughest of the week based on the lineup that we had. But they came out and played just a magnificent game. They were stifling on Vegas the whole time. And that's exactly what we, wanted to see. And against a tough goaltender too, we chased them. You know what I mean? Like, that is meaningful when you make those kind of statements, like chasing your number one goaltender and making them look kind of foolish to boot. There were some experts that said, well, Vegas had a couple of injuries in their top 6. And really, it should have been, you know what? You don't take it away from the talent. You still have to go and play the game. You still have to get out there and do it. And Vegas has a fantastic D core, really strong. So with a great goaltender and really strong D, that gives you a good leg up, But the Hurricanes, their forecheck is just so stifling. And the speed combined with that, so stifling. They really just took Vegas right out of the game. And it's really too bad there wasn't a shutout there. Yeah. That would have been really nice too. Yeah. What do you guys think of that first one? Carolyn?
My favorite quote, I don't know if you ever watch, mind blank, their coach. This is when I don't
their coach,
Bruce Cassidy.
Yes,
there it is.
Yes.
Yeah. He was 7 minutes after a game sitting at a table like it's the playoffs. They're all, it's like, wow, okay. But he talked about that team, meaning the Hurricanes. I've known them. I played them, obviously, from Boston. And I tried to prepare everybody. We practiced it. We knew they would come hard. But sometimes it's not until you get in the soup that you realize okay, this is what we're dealing with. And we adjusted and came back in the third set. And I thought, in the soup, I have not heard that. And all I'm imagining is, because I have soup every day for breakfast or for lunch. And so I'm imagining, Eichel and Petrangelo and, everybody
Barbashev,
just kind of,
all
all of them just floundering around, being surrounded by noodles and chicken chunks and peas and carrots, all of them with little names, like the little tags of their names, like when they, all floating around, and they're like just trying to get out from surrounded by this potpourri of vegetable soup. And I thought that was just the best description of an opposing coach, the best compliment you could have. They just, until we got in the soup, we didn't get it. And it was my fault. I should have been more emphatic. He didn't blame them, but that was how he described the team. And then the other one was the quote from Elliot Friedman, who watched the game. It says, to go into Vegas, who was undefeated at home, and do that to him, they are legit. And I was like, well, I've actually seen better played games, but if national media is starting to pay attention, and that game to do that was a statement in that sense. So those are my two comments.
Brad, what's your take?
I like the way they beat Vegas. I mean, so Vegas, one of the top teams in the West.
Yep.
This was a good, measuring stick game.
Yep.
We didn't outshoot. It wasn't a crazy outshooting them kind of game. Shots were about even, 34-32. But we won 60% of our faceoffs almost. And it was a 4-0 game going into the third without any power. The Canes went over 4 in the power play. So without any power play help, it's 4-0. Tyson Jost gets his first off of his butt, way. Which was hilarious. For Aaron, who I know speaks French and watches the Habs, so the word for goal in French is butt.
Yeah.
So it was a butt. And then, Eichel kind of ruins the shutout. And then Barbashev gets a power play goal in the last minute of the game, right? Martin gets the empty netter. So this was really like a 4-1 game. But it was a dominant performance by the Canes. I mean, this is what you wanted to see. And it wasn't a game where the other, we outshot them 34-15 or something. And we just but we really used our speed to our advantage in the right ways. And to lead this into the Utah game, which is what we didn't do in Utah, in the drumming of the Golden Knights, you're carrying the puck out of the zone. You're carrying the puck into the attacking zone. You're cycling, you're forechecking, passes are good. And if you noticed, even early in the Utah game, they started dump and chase, which works when you're the first to the puck, but they weren't. Yeah. And so they were, in my opinion, I think I even sent this to Ray early on. I'm like, they're like dumping and chasing, like they're completely off their game tonight from like the get-go. And I was like, I don't have good feelings about this internally. And, you end up there like 1-1 for a bit. But, the Vegas game is how you want to play. And the Utah game is a great example of how you don't want to play, because the zone exits and zone entries are so crucial to the way they've played this year versus past years, when they were much more likely to flip it and just go after it and then retrieve it from the corners. But if you think about it, that's worked for the Hurricanes. I mean, Rod Brind'Amour has been successful flipping in the offensive zone and playing a puck retrieval game. But that's a lot of work, right? That's a lot of taking elbows to the gut. That's a lot of sticks in your face. That's a lot of guys kicking you. I mean, those things happen in those scrums. And so the fact that this year they've been able to skate it out and then skate it in is a lot less tiring on the players. It's a lot less physical, and it gives you better opportunities because, if you're 15 seconds into your shift and you're grinding the corner against a guy like Barbashev, 10, 15 seconds, man, that takes a lot out of you. For folks who have played hockey, and if you haven't played hockey, go wrestle a tree for 15 seconds as hard as you can, and then go skate for another, 30 seconds. It's hard. Yeah. And so by eliminating that and skating things around and skating out of the zone and good zone entries and good passes and good zone entries, you give yourself much more opportunities to exert yourself in the ways that are really beneficial to the goal, which is scoring goals and not just puck retrieval and puck possession. But now instead of just being a puck possession team, you're a puck possession team that has the energy to, get a rotation going and get pucks on net and those things. So if you watch those two games like back to back, I think, in my opinion, I thought that was pretty obvious in the style differences between the games.
Go
Seven
ahead,
minutes.
Carolyn.
7 minutes and then 2 more in the third, and they couldn't get a goal. It was
Brutal.
just, there is something wrong here. They've already headed to the plane. They just weren't there. Pass it, move on. But I think was it the deserved to win meter? I think it was like 90%. Like we had, depending on your source, 6 or 8 expected goals, depending on your source. But it was kind of like when they used to do that before they could score. It was, but there was just whether it was an effort presence or just the follow up or just a little bit short. We know what it looks like. Your openers, the Canes fans know what good hockey looks like. And even if we're not scoring, we get loud when we see it. And that wasn't it.
That graph had me perplexed, and I actually pushed back on that because we outshot them about, it was like what, 6,000 to 12, like we
Something
outshot
like that,
them
yeah.
by, it was a crazy number.
Yeah.
But let's give Utah a little bit of credit, okay? They scored 3 goals in 2.5 minutes, and not just scoring goals. They made the Hurricanes in that time period look like peewee hockey players. I don't know what happened. This might be the best way to describe it. When your computer goes down, sometimes you have to reset it, and it's that long time that it takes to reset before it gets back to normal. It's sitting there spinning. That was that 2.5 minutes there. That was the 3 minutes in Colorado when it's like something happens and everyone loses the job that they're supposed to be doing. They look like they are lost on the ice. And the Utah squad took full advantage of it. Full advantage. And so they deserved to win a little bit more than 2.75% in that thing. The stats can lie to you. You have to use your eyes sometimes as well. And that kind of bothered me. The other thing, and it happens to every team, is we got veggied. Vemelka, and he's done it to us before.
I was just saying, we get coyote like once every other year. It shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, just because they moved.
I made a point of throwing this out there into social media. The boys need to remember these are coyotes dressed in sheep's clothing. And that's exactly what happened. Arizona, that squad, that franchise, for some reason, can do that to you. Their goaltenders get up for games against us. It's happened before. And Veggie's the one that did it. Like, he's, a 2-time offender, at least 2. I mean, he plays well. Now, we've beat him too. Like, that's the thing. But he just got up for it. And there are times where the other thing that I'll say is there are times where I wish Rod might take a timeout earlier than near the end of the game.
Yes.
Okay. He reserves his timeouts near the end of the game. And I'm thinking that in both the Colorado game and Utah, if he had taken the timeout after, say, the second goal that was scored, it would have stopped the bleeding. It would have given everyone a chance to just breathe and understand it's not a panic, and we're a great team, and we can get back to what we were doing that got us the lead. Mm-hmm. There's sometimes where I wish he would not be as judicious with his timeouts.
Mm-hmm.
and holding on to them because you might need them for the end of the game. And I fully understand that. There's 9 times out of 10, you're going to need that timeout at the end of the game to use. But when things fall apart for the boys, wow, like that, in 2 minutes, the game was over. 2.5 minutes, the game ended.
Yeah.
And then 3 minutes with Colorado, the game ended. It was crazy. So I would like to see that. I want to give Utah fans too. They were loud. Like they were, I mean, and that barn's got issues and stuff. It's not really set up for hockey. Weird angles, like the people behind the net on Utah's side, they had their feet at the very spot where the glass meets the boards. That's where their feet sat. So they had an elevated view, which frankly, I think is killer. That would be an outstanding point of view to be up like that, just a tiny bit elevated, looking down on everything. Man, you know what? I like that. It's not going to be like that forever because they're, going to fix it up. But the Utah fans were so loud, so loud. They were right into it. And the only thing that I hated in and amongst all of that was, Jack Jury getting jumped. And
I think that was
nuts. You think so?
Because he was hit by Michael. I'm gonna blow his name.
Carconi?
Is it Carconi?
Yeah, that's the guy who
was So Michael checked somebody pretty hard in the boards. They're skating away. Jack comes up behind him. I think he thought that somebody was coming after him, and it just happened to be Jack because he just turns and starts swinging. I don't think he realized. I thought he thought somebody was coming after him, and he was gonna get the jump on him a little bit, and not realizing it was Jack, and because Jack was like, "What the heck's going on?" I mean, it's pretty clear he wanted no part of it. So. Not that I think it was the right thing to do, but I have a feeling that he was like, oh, I just delivered a big hit and somebody's, right on me. Like I'm about to get into a fight and he just started swinging. So I don't know. Yeah. I didn't like it, but I kind of see where, okay, maybe, if that's his thought process, maybe that's why it happened. Cause maybe he was thinking somebody was about to deck him. So.
And the final, we were on the power play for 11 minutes in the end. 5 of those minutes were a major.
Yep.
45 seconds, a 5-on-3. And there was a great portion of that where we just couldn't even gain entry.
Yeah.
And that was so frustrating. Like that much penalty minute time. I mean, and in the end, Vejmelka making the saves that he did kind of trumps whatever else you have. If he's making the stops, it doesn't matter how much time you had on the power play. But my goodness, that was something. Then we moved to last night, and we've got the news that Martin's going to be in net. And Brad asked me the question before the start, what do you think? Is this going to be a gong show? He didn't use those words, but that was essentially it. And I thought, you know what? Martin's played well. I mean, it stinks that we still don't have Jarvis in. But I think we'll be all right. I mean, we're getting the rest with Ottawa coming in after a loss against Philly the night before. I loved last night. Again, we've talked about it. Spencer's first career shutout, the puck toss. And at the start of the game, he was staying home. I noticed in the entire first period, the puck would come firing around the boards on his end, and he was going nowhere. He was not stepping out to stop the puck. He was not whatever. And I asked Brad in the midst of all of this, I said, do you think he's just staying home to gauge the parameters of where he is, where the net is in comparison to the rest of the rink? I mean, he hadn't been at home. He hadn't played at home this year. So this is his first game in the home barn, and you want to get yourself attuned to the surroundings, I guess. And that's what it looked like. And then every now and again, as the game went along, he'd go back and start playing the puck. But he was so tight and locked in. It was terrific to watch. And it makes me want to say, you know what? Now you can leave Kochetkov out. Don't bring him in against St. Louis. Let Martin roll and see if he can't get, a little bit of a record for himself going with consecutive shutouts. You know what I mean? Like until he's been scored on, let him play, let him cook. What do you guys think for today?
I'm not with you. I actually slept last night. I mean, he was so excited, and I just no. Let's not push our luck. Let's bring in. Kochetkov has some, ground to make up after not a great outing versus the Blues. So he's going to be highly motivated. He's going to be motivated because the other guy got a shutout and he hasn't been able to get one. And I think give it back to Piotr tonight. Let's get a little bit of calm return to our very excited Spencer Martin, and then we've got Philadelphia. That can be Martin, and then have PK ready for New Jersey. That's my take.
It's a valid one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like
I hear what you're saying. I think Adam Gold actually said the same thing. He would run him back to back, give another day rest.
That's not helping me. I'm kidding.
It's not giving you the warm fuzzies there, huh, Ray?
No.
I heard it. That I was listening because I'm after a win and I want to replay the game in my head. I listen to my dog walks and
absolutely.
I disagreed with 22 hours. No.
There you go, Brad.
Quickly, just because we're running long. Last night the Sens looked really sluggish to come out. The Hurricanes capitalized on it early. Martinuk, I think 8 minutes, gets the only 5v5, the only even strength goal of the night. Power play goes 2 for 5. Aho and Blake both deliver power play goals. William Carrier gets the empty netter, but instead of firing it from center ice, he has a defender on him. He's like, I think I'll just skate it in the whole way. I think I'm just going to just, put my body between you and the puck, and I'm just going to skate it in. There's nothing you can do about it. Love seeing that.
Yeah, he was shepherding that puck into the net, wasn't he?
Oh, what is his last name, right? He was the puck carrier.
Exactly.
The confidence with which you need to, handle to do that instead of just shooting it, I thought was great. And the other thing about Martin that you were talking about, Ray, is as the game went on, Martin was getting further and further out of his net in terms of blocking shots. Early on, he was deeper in his net, not confident. And as the game went on a couple of those shots for the Sens, he was a good step or two out of the paint. I mean, he was way out there, which makes him look huge. There's nowhere to shoot, right?
Yeah.
And you only do that if you know you're going to get it and deflect it somewhere safe. And so I think his confidence was really building throughout the game. Super excited to see that. As far as today goes, you have the Blues, in a back-to-back. They played in Boston yesterday. I think they won in overtime. So hopefully they'll be it's at least a little more fair than last time. Last time they beat us on a back-to-back, but they had not played the day before we had. This time, at least both teams have played. They had to fly. Our boys got to go home. So I'm expecting a good tilt. I don't know what's going to happen. If Kochetkov is ready, feels good. I'm still waiting for Kochetkov to take Bennington's head off at some point. That's still the goalie fight of the century that so many people are waiting
for that. I cannot.
It'll be hopeful though. Bennington played all 63 minutes yesterday, so I'm going to run him back to back.
Wednesday, I will actually be traveling through Pennsylvania, and I wish I could stop at this game. The Canes are in Philly for a 7:30 tilt. If it was just me by myself, I would go, but I don't want the whole family getting into the hotel at like 2 a.m. So we're gonna watch it on TV back to back with the New Jersey Devils the next night, and then on the 23rd, next Saturday before we record, you have the Blue Jackets coming. I'm sorry, we're going to Columbus to beat the Blue. So, another 8 points is up for grabs. I'm going with 6 again, because I think you're better than all 4 of these teams, but somebody's going to steal one, or you're going to lose a couple in overtime. So 6 out of 8 for me for the week, I think, is once again kind of the points du jour. You could do better than that. I don't think this is a 4-point week, no matter how it shakes out. So,
Carolyn, your thought? How many points are we looking at? 4 games? What do you think we come away with?
I like 6. I think New Jersey has looked really, really good. I watched both, not the entire games against Florida, but they then got shut out by Tampa, I believe. Was that last night?
Yes, it was.
So Pesci's coming along. I saw he and Luke Hughes were at the top of the with the game score charts that come out, hockey stat cards, whereas Dougie Hamilton was at the bottom, all the way to the left. So I think they're onto something in New Jersey. They're starting to feel it, and they don't like us. So I think that's going to be a measuring stick game for them. Yeah. And we're going to be coming from Philadelphia and maybe less. We'll see.
Yeah.
At least it's a short trip.
That's the matchup of the week,
Yeah.
That's the one. I think we should win the other 3. 5, 6 for sure.
And to me, just as a side note, which is good news for the Hurricanes, undefeated against the Metro. And I would, that in 5 games undefeated against Metro, I would really like to see them continue that. Those are, yes, every game is worth 2 points, but some are a little bit more valuable than others.
Yeah.
And if we can continue taking points from the Metro, I think that's really what I love to see. Like those are 4-point swings, right?
Yeah.
It is really what they are. And we got to have them. Philly, I think, being in Philly, never easy. They're a team. Torts runs them hard, and they play hard. And New Jersey has seemed to have found themselves. They're playing a lot better than they did at the start. Let's face it; they were struggling to start.
Yeah.
So we beat them the one time. It might be a different story this time. It's going to be a heck of a game for sure. Yeah. This has been a great episode. Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us. It was great hearing your story. I loved everything about it. You're an influencer, a hockey mom, which is difficult, manager of a team. You threw all that in there, and then you bring the knowledge to the game and insight. It was fantastic, Carolyn. I loved having you here. Brad, too, of course. This was a great episode. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I really always enjoy good conversation with people who are thoughtful and are just, that's the problem with sometimes what's now Blue Sky and X, which we've all abandoned. Sometimes people can just write off a post and you don't know whether should I take that seriously or are they just, having
it's hard, right?
Just a little thing and having a little bit more in-depth conversation. You don't get to do that as much in my world. So I really appreciate your including me. Anytime you need a filler, I'm on standby.
Yeah, the door is open for you, no question. Brad, I had a feeling we'd run long on this one because
I did too.
When the conversation is great, it doesn't feel like going over. But
time flies, right?
It does when you're having fun. Great episode. Loved everything about it. Brad, something missing. We do it every show. Oh, you know what? There was something missing.
See?
Next week.
It's not just a bit.
November 24th. Caniacs, Storm Cellar listeners, mark it on your calendar. Something big happening. The joy of my life will be
We're very
experienced.
excited. Very
Very,
special
very
guest.
excited. Very special guest. Not telling you who it is, but man, oh man, am I excited.
It's so important, Ray. We're going to do prep work.
Yes. Yes,
We've already started prep work more than a week
we've
in
already
advance.
started our prep. We
Oh,
already
my.
started
On
our
the back,
prep
but I am
work.
patting myself on the back for that.
Yeah, there you go. So keep that in mind. Stay tuned. Big,
Oh,
huge.
I'm on the
It's
edge
going to
of
be
my
awesome.
seat.
There you go. That's what we want.
Uh-huh.
You paid for the seat, but you only need the edge. Now that I got that out, Brad. Now
And
that I
shout out
got
again,
that
real
out.
quick, to Zach over at Locked on Hurricanes. I know we threw him under the bus a little bit today. Hopefully,
No, he was on the
takes it
right
well.
side of that. He was on the right side of that.
I mean, his points are fair. I think our points are also fair. So, that's what, if we all agreed all the time, then we only would need one podcast for all of hockey, right? So,
And they
but
go to us.
I will say, if you're going to listen to one Hurricanes podcast, it should be this one. So I don't know what you were thinking I was going to say.
Yeah,
It should be this one.
exactly.
But if you're going to listen to two Hurricanes podcasts, you should definitely make Locked on Hurricanes. And he's also part of the Surge Cast. Obviously, we love him, Kat, and Bailey as well. But and for me, I don't have a lot of time, so a little 20-minute daily is perfect for what I can consume. And so we appreciate Zach and all that he does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, yes. I know what it is. Go Canes.
Go Canes.
Go Canes.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Ray and I greatly appreciate your support in helping us produce an informative and fun podcast. As always, we'd like to say that we believe hockey is for everyone. Whether you're a Caniac or a bunch of jerks, doesn't matter, as we're just a couple of jerks anyway. We would love to hear your questions, comments, and suggestions. We will do our best to answer anything hockey related. You can reach us via email at stormcellar97@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are at stormcellar97, and on Facebook at facebook.com/stormcellar97.